guys are tuning in, joining us. We are far away from you, but we still feel so close. Reading the comments and just knowing that we're all putting time to the side just to worship God together. So we're glad that you are tuning in with us. We do have a couple of announcements, some exciting things happening at Soundhouse. We mentioned this a little bit in the pre-chat, but we are doing our drive-through, and that is going to be at Marine Stadium. And in that, we are going to be handing you some kits of just what you are going to need for community groups. I heard there's going to be donuts there as well, and we're going to be taking all the safety precautions we need to, masks, gloves, all of that. But yeah, just drive through, load up the car with your family. I miss you guys. I know we all miss you, so we would love to see you, and it's going to be fun. So stay tuned for more details on that. What is the date on that one?
June 6th.
June 6th. So it is coming up. And then speaking of getting those packages, the reason that we're going to be giving you those is that's what you're going to need for the community groups. And community groups are starting pretty soon. They are not live yet, but they're going to be this week. So we just got to finalize a couple details. But yeah, we're so excited just to put that time to the side. Gather as a community. We are going to be doing them. There's going to be virtual ones, and then we believe that we're going to have some that are going to be half virtual, and then we're going to be meeting up, with some distance and backyard. So more information on that, but that's coming up. Lots more exciting things you could check out on the website, on the app. We're constantly just thinking of ways that we can minister to you and our communities, and you guys have ministered to us so much, so we're so thankful for that. And so with that said, here is some worship.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Soundhouse Church Online. We're so excited you're here with us today, and we're really glad that we can just take some time to worship together. So will you sing with us?
Our God is the Lamb that was slain.
Good morning, Soundhouse. I hope you guys are doing good, all at home, and I'm really happy to be with you guys this morning. I'm really excited to tell you, I think what they talked about in the pre-chat, that we, especially due to the announcement that just happened, and that churches are thinking about, okay, how do we start to gather? We as a staff have been thinking of all kinds of different ways that we can make this happen. And yes, it's on our hearts, on our mind. It's something that if you have a question, are we ever going to meet again? Yes, we are going to meet. And it's like the very first thing that we're constantly thinking about how we can make every little effort to start to move forward in meeting. And so, so just be rest assured that we are on it. We are taking care of it. And we are troubleshooting whatever way that we can get there, we're going to do it. And so if it starts small and it can slowly grow over time, that's our goal. And our goal, yes, is to be back at Rogers. So we want to make sure that that's something that we're constantly have our eye on. And we don't really know what the district is allowing us to do yet with the school. So we'll wait to hear from them. We're trying to reach out to them. But it's been quite an interesting process for us. And we're going to get there, so don't you worry. So, and just to let you know too, all those announcements that we talked about earlier in the pre-chat, and Dominic could let you know, we're going to also be discussing them in detail, and the message as well. After the message, we'll sit down and we're just going to kind of maybe even go further into it in our post-chat, And so Dominic and Christy are going to kind of just have some opportunities to share more information. I will too as well about the message. So let's pray and let's get started. God, we thank you so much for today. God, I thank you that, first of all, God, that your hand of protection has been on so many. And God, I just also pray for those who have experienced loss and massive setbacks because of the times that we're in right now. God, I just ask you to be with them, be with those families. And God, just be with us as a church, as a community, as a state, and really as a nation to wisely move forward. And God, just keep us protected, keep us safe, God, and give us guidance. And God, we just thank you that even in this time, I've talked to so many people who've grown closer to you, God, and have maybe learned a lot about who they are and things that, God, that you're working on them on because they could slow down for just enough time to do so. God, we love you. We thank you. Be with us today in this message and on this Memorial Day weekend, God, and God, our heart goes out for those who have had family members and friends who've given their life for others so that others can live a life that they couldn't. And so, God, we're just grateful for them and keep them in our heart and our prayers this weekend. We love you in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, so I was reading through the book of James and this week and just really kind of just spending some time there. And as I was going through, I got into chapter 3, and I had to pause. And so when I saw chapter 3, especially in the verses I'm going to read today, it just hit me. And maybe it's the place that I'm at. Maybe it's the place that maybe I feel like our culture and our church is at, and maybe even just as a nation. And just pause for a minute when I came upon these verses. And so I actually today feel like we need to take some time, set it aside, especially as we as a church are seeking God's guidance and wisdom and of what to do, and then really ultimately praying and that we make the wisest decisions that we can through our eldership and through our staff and through our church, and also us as a church, just praying for wisdom of even for your own family and yourself of seeking out what is true wisdom in the way we make decisions, how we make decisions. And so when I came across this in James 3, I just said, I'm just going to write a message about this. I think it's important. And I was thinking about wisdom in itself when I came across that verse. And I started kind of challenging myself on what I thought wisdom was and what maybe even what I maybe think it is. And it all started back when I was a kid. If you guys remember the movie Karate Kid, right? So it's with this I always saw him as this quintessential Mr. Miyagi. He's this wise man, full of wisdom. He's got all these nice one-liners. And there's a point where Daniel Daniel-san gets hurt, and he like rubs his hands together and like somehow heals his leg. And I remember as a kid thinking like, he knows things I don't know. Like he literally made his hands warm and healed his leg, and Daniel-san could come out and do the crane kick and defeat the Cobra Kai. And so like it was like a big deal. And I always just thought of him as that. But I really couldn't put my hand on it, but there was something different there. And I thought to myself, like, how do I get this? How do I come up with little one-liners? And people go, oh, that was really good. Do I learn karate? That was kind of a big thing. Maybe there's wisdom there that's like ancient wisdom. And do I maybe kind of like grow a goatee like Mr. Miyagi? I didn't know. I just thought there's something there. And as I grew and I started to see like, my idea and perception of wisdom was beginning to change, I started asking this question. Maybe you're asking this question: what is wisdom? What does it mean to make a wise decision? What does it mean to live in wisdom or live wisely? And I think that these are some questions a lot of people might ask. There's a lot of, I would personally say, misinformation about what wisdom is and true wisdom is, because there's a lot of schools of thought around wisdom. The definition of wisdom is this, and this is just in the dictionary, but it's the soundness of an action or decision, right? With regard to the application of experience, knowledge, and good judgment. And I would say that's a good, broad, general, high-level view, and maybe just an overall summarizing of what cultures would say is wisdom. But I think it goes further than that when we're seeking out wisdom. History is full of these great philosophers who dedicated their lives to seeking wisdom. I mean, their whole life's mission was to gain wisdom. And you can kind of see it, in some of the greats, right? But philosophy, even just in itself, really means the love of wisdom. So it was a big deal for them. So you have prominent people like Plato, you have prominent people like Aristotle. When we think of those who were seeking wisdom, right? You have Socrates, you have Immanuel Kant, you have okay, here they are right here. I'm sorry, I'm trying to learn to do this. You have all these great people all along the board. And there's so many more than these, but these are a few of what would say are some of the greats that span time. And they're all seeking out wisdom. And what they would view as wisdom is different than the other, right? But all in the pursuit of it. So we see throughout history and throughout culture that wisdom is a driving force behind, I think, culture. And, I was looking at all these different definitions, and I was seeing like, okay, philosophy means, right, the love of wisdom. And then ultimately wisdom in like the Proto-Indo-European sense is to actually see, right? So there's all these things about, okay, wisdom means something different, right? It means even like a perspective shift almost. It means that I'm going to see things differently than maybe even the norm, right? I was reading about certain mythologies, but the one that kind of stood out to me was the mythology of like the god of Odin, right? It's this Norse mythology. And the story goes like this, because if you know from watching any of the Marvel movies that Odin, Thor's dad, is missing an eye. And you're thinking, oh, did he lose that in battle? But really the story goes is that he was seeking out wisdom from the well of wisdom and knowledge. And so the god there that said that I'll let you drink from this, but I need an offering. He offered his own eye in order to drink from it. And it was like this symbolic trading of one perspective for another, or one way of seeing for another, and more so a higher one. And so when we look at wisdom, we can look at it through it's this absolute pursuit of those seeking wisdom throughout history. And even in this Norse way of like, wait, there's a perception shift. There's a change that happens. There's a one way of which I used to see things, and now there's another way. And in the way of this Norse mythology is it's a higher way, a trading off of. I no longer look this way. I actually look in a different perspective. And I would say that if I look at today, when we say, oh, that person's wise, or oh, look how smart they are, and sometimes we equate that to wisdom or they're a wise person, is that I think what we feel like that knowing is actually seeing, like in the sense that they saw wisdom back then. But not necessarily knowledge is really seeing. The more you know, it's not that the better you see. And we can see that through our culture in so many different ways. Knowledge and wisdom, they do differ in a lot of ways. And it can be confusing because we can mistake someone who knows a lot to be someone who is actually wise or is in the pursuit of wisdom. And I want to maybe point out this way: if knowing more or knowledge was wisdom, then anybody who can just spit out a bunch of facts, we would say would be a wise person. But that wouldn't be truthful, considering what wisdom has been defined over all the years. If you could memorize a lot, you would be then considered wise, and that's not the facts. If you had scientific understanding, if you could memorize the phone book and spit them all out if somebody asked you, that doesn't make you a wise person. Or if you have technical know-how. If we went under the terms of the more you know, the wiser you are, then we would then say that these people are wise people. And I'm not going to lie. I know people with great memories, but when I observe their life, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of wisdom in areas in their life. So that kind of goes out the window. I really like this guy. I've been reading some of his work, and his name is Dr. Neil Burton, and he's a psychiatrist. He's a philosopher. I always like that combo. And he's a writer, and he teaches at Oxford. And this is what he's saying about when you're talking about ancient wisdom, the pursuit of wisdom historically, and just the philosophy of wisdom. And he says this. He says, like looking at Socrates, he questioned a number of men who laid claim to wisdom. He questioned politicians and generals and poets and craftsmen, and in each case concluded. Now, this is sounds like a very arrogant statement, but maybe the punchline's at the end here. I am likely, he said, to be wiser than he, to this small extent that I do not think I know what I do not know. And I think that is a very good source from maybe an ancient thinking of wisdom, and maybe wisdom itself is not necessarily thinking I've arrived in something that you don't know. And so that kind of sets the stage for, I think, this great verse that he then says, which is the Bible tells us, when pride comes, then comes disgrace. But with humility comes wisdom. And he goes on to say, Socrates was really the wisest of all people, not because he knew everything or anything, but because he knew what he did not know. And further on in the quote, he said he also knew the limitations of what he did know. Now that seems like, then what is wisdom? What can you know? And I wouldn't want us to get stuck there, because it does go further into it begins with a sense of humility. I think that's why he put that Bible verse in there, which I like that he did, because wisdom grows from the fact of I don't really know what I don't know. And what I do know, I need to grow and learn in so much more. And the fact is that so many people, and I think in my life, when I stop the wisdom process, when I stop growth in wisdom, when I see myself as not being wise in an area, it usually comes from the fact that I'm no longer rooted in humility in the area. And I would say in some kind of false confidence that I think I know more than I do. And I have to hold that position. I don't know if you've ever been there. But maybe William Shakespeare said it best. He said, "The fool doth think he is wise, but the wise man knows himself to be a fool." And I think that is a great statement. And I think it's one just to have a base, or a grounding that, like, the moment we think that we are wise, the moment we might find ourselves in trouble. And so when we're seeking out wisdom and God, what do you think we should do? And I want to be someone who lives wisely. We do know that the moment that we think that what we do is wise and what others do is not, then we find ourselves in trouble. And I think that's what the Bible's full of, not being judgmental, not being arrogant, not being stuck in our ways, not being unreasonable, not being someone who closes their ears to others or even peers down and looks at people. That stops wise living in wisdom. And I would say that Socrates and many of the greats, they challenged the norms, right? They questioned a lot. But even if you are someone who questions a lot, I would say its wisdom isn't necessarily a negative knowledge, meaning that I question everything. Because if that was the case, people who are super critical, super skeptical, we would then say are wise people. But I also have met lots of people who are super critical, super wise, but I don't get the impression that I'm seeing that that's wisdom. So just because someone questions everything doesn't mean that they are wise either. So a lot of times we can put ourselves in categories and categorize wisdom in all these different ways. And I think it's a little bit dangerous when we just say, okay, here's what wisdom is, and we box it in. Because I think then we have to ask the question, if we say, okay, wait, then who is wise then? And the question some people might ask is, how do I become wise then? If it's not just by questioning everything, if it's not just by acknowledging that I don't know everything, but how do I become wise, and who is wise then? And maybe we should approach that question with another question, which I know that's frustrating, and I hate it when people do this to me. But if we want to box in wisdom, then you have to also put it onto other definitions too. So let's do it this way. Maybe define, like, tell me somebody who's happy. And tell me then what makes that person happy. I think when we do that to wisdom, it has so many nuances and so many ways of which wisdom operates. And some places may be more hidden than others, but it's there. Same with happiness. Like, happiness is so hard to define as a set definition. And let me give you an example, because it has so many nuances, and I'm going to go with happiness. Trust me, this will make sense. But I tried to make a definition of what everybody would deem as happy. Okay, tell me if you have more, or tell me if you agree with this list. But when I see, and I want to define happiness, or even maybe if I even try to deem it for myself, I'd say, oh, it's somebody who smiles a lot. Look at how much they smile. And you'd say, wow, that person's really happy. Or they're carefree. Like, they just seem so relaxed about everything. They must be so happy. They're not stressed. Oh, they're so happy. Or they laugh a lot. You can't laugh that much and not be happy. There's a level of wealth and comfortability that makes them be able to be happy, because stress makes you not happy. Or they love their work. Look how passionate they are about their work. They must be happy. Or they have a near perfect marriage, or at least what I think they have. They must be so happy. Or their kids are just angels. They must be so happy. They come from a good home. And see, they have the structure and the foundation. They must be really happy. They have a lot of nice stuff, and like, it's so much nicer when you have, stuff. They vacation and travel a lot. They must be so happy. They have lots of friends, and happy people have friends. They're so good with people. Look how good they are, and that they can do that because they're just so happy. Or they enjoy hobbies. And maybe this is too superficial. They're so attractive. They must be happy. Attractive people are happy, aren't they? And which is something I don't have to struggle with, which is okay, which is good. And they live healthy, and so healthy people are happier people. Now, all of that, probably we would say that's a happy person, but I can't tell you how many people I personally have encountered. And some of these things I feel like I have a level of a handle on it, especially the attractiveness, but I'm not happy sometimes. And I think that when we try to define something in such a general way through an outside observation, or through boxing something in, we might find ourselves limiting its capability and its ability for our lives. So just how we can't define somebody as happy by those things, because we know lots of people who possess these, but will eventually say, but I'm very unhappy inside. We don't really know how to define certain things completely. Wisdom encompasses a wide range of definitions. And in certain ways, it may dwell, honestly, wisdom in probably more people than you think. I don't think that if I see someone is considered wise if their whole life is full of wisdom. I have met people where I've seen like a lot of unwise decisions, but they possess wisdom in an area in their life. And when I start seeing people that way, I start like becoming more curious about people if I'm in the pursuit of wisdom and being around wisdom or wise people. And so I have met many, many people where when they talk about certain things, I'm like, that's not really wise. But when they talk about an experience they went through and how they grew personally in that area, I'm like, that's very wise. You've gained wisdom in that area, which then opens the doorway for me to not write people off and miscategorize people or judge people like the Bible says, because I'm in the pursuit of being around wise people. The Bible gives us a foundational virtues of wisdom. Scripture is a great place to go to seek out wisdom, and it puts a great importance on wisdom. All throughout Scripture, you're going to see the discussion of wisdom happening. Ecclesiastes 7:12, written by Solomon, what would be known as the wisest person who ever lived. He says this, for wisdom is a defense. Now listen, he's cutting the difference between a knowledge type of wisdom or a circumstantial type of wisdom and true wisdom. And here's what he says. For wisdom is a defense and money is a defense, but the excellency of knowledge is that wisdom giveth life to them who have it. Meaning this, some things can make your life, can lengthen your life, but wisdom ultimately can save your life. Wisdom adds to your life. Wisdom, it brings a fullness of life. Some things can just extend your life, like money. Some things can make your life easier, but wisdom brings a fullness to it and a meaning to it. So I'm going to just do two things really quick. One is we got to talk about the birthplace of wisdom. If you're one who seeks wisdom, wants wisdom in your life, wants to make wise decisions, you got to go to the birthplace of wisdom. In every area of life, the Bible suggests that wisdom begins in humility. You know why Jesus references children, especially the heart of a child, is in statements he would make is like greater than anyone else is around. Don't not welcome those who are like a child. And he hoped that you would be like a child as well as you approach your faith, is because if you're looking about children, they're a sponge. There's a lot of humility in children. And you may not think so, but there's a sense of, I don't have it all figured out. I don't have the pressure of everyone thinks I have it figured out, so I got to live up to that. So I'll live under the bad decisions I'm continuing to make because I don't want people to think that I don't have it all figured out. A child has this ability to learn and take in more and kind of digest and like open to all different things that a lot of us get kind of locked down and weighed down by. And so when you approach wisdom, you approach it like a child in humility that I don't know what I don't know, but I sure would like to know, or I'd like to gain an understanding in that. And ultimately, maybe that will impact my actions, will impact my quality of life. Proverbs 11:12 says this, when pride comes, we're going to read it in a different translation. When pride comes, then comes disgrace, but with humility comes wisdom. And so wisdom is ultimately a perspective shift, like that seeing thing we talked about with that Norse mythology. There's a transference of one way of seeing for a new perspective. So wisdom brings a perspective shift. Wisdom brings values. Those values and principles of wisdom, they produce actions, and then they ultimately result in outcomes in your life, right? That I think God ultimately hopes for us to have, but it all begins in humility. It starts there. I'll never forget when I was doing a summer job when I got out of high school. It was construction, and I'm not like great at construction. So if you've ever worked with me, the guys who went down to Houston and saw me do construction down there as we did a mission trip down there, I am not great at it. But I took a stab at it. I decided to go down there when I was in high school, I decided to get on the job that was re-roofing houses. Now, the foreman told me exactly what to do. He said, do you know what you're doing? I said, absolutely I do, but I didn't know what I was doing. And then I just basically didn't want to face the fact that I was so green, I didn't understand. And so he showed me how to snap a line, how to keep it straight, how to measure all these things up, and then how to put the shingle in. I re-roofed the entire house, and it just went, it went on a slant and sagged all the way down. And I tried to fix it. I didn't tell him, and then he came in, and then like it wasn't good. He explained to me and with a lot of cuss words where I belonged, and then so we had to rip off the entire roof and then start over. That pride like came ultimately with some disgrace, and it held me from learning. Held me back from really learning and growing and wanting to do the very best thing I can do. It was a value that was hindered because the fact is I couldn't be humble enough to say, teach me more, I need to know more. That pride is the exact opposite of humility. And humility births wisdom. Pride and arrogance ultimately just births like death. And if you want to look at the birth of humility, birth of wisdom is pride, the birth of wisdom is humility, then the birth of pride, I want to read maybe where it comes from and maybe what happens when like this, I don't know, stagnant life, a life that's shut off and a life that holds us back. It does come from pride, and here's where it starts. Isaiah 14 tries to describe the very best how the Satan or evil, or however, sometimes people categorize it, how Lucifer fell, and where it began and how it began. And it says this in Isaiah 14:12-5. How you are fallen from heaven, the writer's saying, O Lucifer, son of the morning, how you are cut down to the ground. You were weakened, you've weakened the nations, for you have said in your heart, here's where the pride is, I will ascend in heaven, I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will also sit on the mount of the congregation on the furthest side of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds, and I will be like the Most High. Yet you shall be brought down to Sheol and to the lowest depths of the pit. Now, I don't really teach about Satan and Lucifer very much, but this is an origin of maybe the idea of where pride comes from. And listen to the destruction that happens from there, right? The nations, right, being hurt, down to the pit, down, descending and not ascending and growing. You're being brought low and into a pit. Now, this begins with pride. This would be what would be the original sin beyond the garden. But this sin of pride that led to Satan's fall and how it affected the hearts and minds also of Adam and Eve. It's the very deception that he used, which is pride and arrogance and distrusting God and wanting to trust and be more like God and be gods themselves, that actually resulted in the same thing, right? We just read about Satan's shame and the loss and the ruin and the death, and that's exactly what happened from the fall. Pride has ultimately the same results and the outcomes every time. Wisdom has the same results and outcomes every time. And we see that pride stifles wisdom in our life. And I wrote this question down. Has there ever been a time or a situation in your life that pride walled off wisdom from you? Where you literally were stifled in your growth because of pride? And maybe you're there now. Maybe you're struggling with this now and realizing you can't grow in an area because maybe it's so hard to admit that you don't know that you don't know. Or that you've gotten yourself into a situation you can't even admit that you're struggling. Pride will keep you stuck. Humility is really the fertile ground of which wisdom grows. The best example of wisdom born in humility is really from Solomon. It's in 1 Kings 3, if you want to look it up. But God gives Solomon almost like it feels like a genie wish. It's very weird, like to see this. But he really, God is, if you read it, God's responding to Solomon's faithfulness and his sacrifice to God and his all-out devotion to God like David and Solomon. And God is pleased with that. And he says, you know what? Whatever you want, Solomon, name it, it's yours. But Solomon gives God a surprising response that it almost feels like God's surprised by the response considering how he's dealt with human nature. In verse 7, it says this, Now the Lord God, my God, this is Solomon, you have made me king instead of my father. I love the humility in this guy all throughout this. My father David, but I am like a child who doesn't know his way around. And here I am in the midst of your own people, God, a nation so great and numerous they cannot be counted. Give me an understanding of heart so that I can govern your people well and know the difference between right and wrong. For who by himself is able to govern this great people of yours? Listen to the humility and the honor that he gives God. The Lord was pleased with Solomon that he had asked for wisdom. That's interesting that God was pleased that he chose wisdom. So God replied, because you have asked for wisdom in governing my people with justice and have not asked for a long life, wealth, or death of your enemies, which is very much of the world, I will give you what you asked for. I will give you a wise and understanding heart, so as no one else has ever had. And then it goes on to say, I'll give you also things you haven't asked for, Solomon. Wisdom begins with, I don't know. Solomon's a great example for this. I want to learn what is right to you, God, and what is wrong in your eyes. God, help me with that. And I think a lot of times we're kind of put in Solomon's position because God said, just, call upon me, ask for me. I want to help you as my children. But a lot of times we would ask for things that God would say, oh, you didn't ask for this and this and this. Or you asked for this and this and this, but I really want you to have wisdom. So what I've learned from this passage and many other is that God has no problem at all with me asking for wisdom. If that's my primary request, then God's so excited that I'm asking for wisdom, even versus all these other things, which are important, but he wants wisdom first. The last thing here, and it's these biblical virtues of wisdom, and I want to go through these super fast. The Bible clues us in on virtues and actions of wisdom and their manifestation. Right? James 3, this is the verse I was talking about, and it's titled Wisdom from Above, which is really the title of my message. Eternal, and it's infinite, and it's a right way of living on earth. So when you're talking about wisdom from above, it's heaven's wisdom for earthly living, right? But listen to how James starts this out. Verse 13, who is wise and understanding among you? Now, if you just start there, you're going to be a little confused. But if you read chapters 1 and 2, James is challenging the people about the way that they're living, challenging the way they speak, challenging the way that they view religion, challenging the way that they think of their own righteousness, and challenging wisdom itself. So it's no wonder he starts out and he says, now that I've kind of laid out this case about those who have deemed themselves as wise, he says, who is wise and understanding among you? So it's a statement and it's also an invitation. And so he says this, kind of like challenging their standards of wisdom. He says, goes on to say, then by this good conduct, let each show his works in meekness of wisdom. Meaning this, meekness of wisdom is this, like that childlike trust, that I'm trusting God in his character right now, in his generous love, that he's going to show me in wisdom, and he's going to guide me in wisdom. I'm trusting him in his character. So right here, in your good conduct, let him show his works in meekness of wisdom. It says, but verse 14, but if you have bitter jealousy, selfish ambition in your heart, and do not boast and be false to the truth, he says. This is not wisdom that comes from above. It is earthly and it's unspiritual, and he says it's demonic. There's a clear distinction between the world's values of wisdom and heaven's values. There's a clear distinction between the world's way, if you will, and heaven's way. And so he's kind of cutting it here. But listen to this verse, verse 16. For where jealousy and selfish ambition exist, there will be disorder in every vile practice. This is the opposite of grace and love and generosity. It's jealousy and selfish ambition. And when he says this here, he says that it's every vile practice when there's jealousy and selfish ambition. I think that those two things are fueled by pride. I think that they're allowed to flourish under pride and arrogance. And if you look at those things, what it says, disorder and vile practice, you look at what happened from the fall of Satan, is that it was disorder and vile practice, right? This is an origin statement, if you will, of Lucifer's sin and the fall that echoed in its effects. Verse 17, here we go. But wisdom from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, open to reason, full of mercy, good fruits, impartial, and sincere. Now that's the meditation verse for, I think, for us this week. Wisdom, right? From above is first pure, right? It's peaceable, gentle, open to reason, full of mercy, good fruits, impartial, and sincere. If I can just try to grab those, and if I can just try to walk those out and possess those, like then my task, that's my task, right? I would love to be someone who's open to reason, but arrogance and pride won't let me do that. But humility will, right? I'd love to be somebody who's full of mercy. Arrogance and pride will not let me do that, but humility will. Good fruits, things that kind of manifest from wisdom. Pride won't let that happen. It will actually stifle it and kill it. But humility will. I want to be impartial. Pride doesn't let me do that, but humility does. And I want to be sincere. And pride and arrogance doesn't let you do that. It stifles it, but humility does. This is how God defines wisdom that is from above. And he says this in an evangelistic mindset in verse 18, and a harvest of righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace. So be those who do. Be those who seek to walk in wisdom. And people who are wise usually are people of peace. I will say this in closing, is that ultimately changing our perspective on what we maybe have boxed wisdom in and looking at it from wisdom from above, that God gives us a snapshot of what that looks like, and really cultivating a broader perspective of wisdom, we can see that it's not by intelligence, it's not by all these different things that we would deem as wisdom or knowing more or making a few good choices. But I will say this, is that when we're pursuing wisdom, it will take a quality that is in some greater than a lot, which is courage. When you're pursuing wisdom and you want to be a peacemaker, peaceable, it takes courage. When you want to be open-minded, it takes courage. When you want to explore, it takes courage. Sincerity takes courage. Mercy takes courage. And I think it's important because, you know, I read this statement, and I wanted to read it quick, is yes, when you're being courageous and you're seeking wisdom and you're asking questions or saying you don't know and kind of putting yourself out there, yes, it's exhilarating but terrifying at the same time, but you're stepping towards wisdom. But when we're talking about courage, it said not least courage, right? Because it conflicts with so much, right, when we start to seek wisdom, of what we have been taught and programmed to think. And it takes a lot of courage to step outside to seek wisdom beyond what we have been taught and what we think. And maybe sometimes it feels like we're programmed to think. And that is saying, I don't know what I don't know, but God, I seek your wisdom. I seek the wisdom that produces actions, that produces outcome. I like what Aristotle said about courage. He says it's the first of the human qualities because it is the one which guarantees all others. And there are parts of the statement I do agree with, and I think that courage is an important quality, but it does secure the others. It helps you stay continuing to move forward in areas that are unknown and saying that I don't know, but I want to know more. James 1:5, if any one of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God, who gives generously to all without reproach, and it will be given to him. So God says, come to me if you lack wisdom. Now, as you seek wisdom, you better have an open heart and a humble heart, because God's going to give you direction, and it may be difficult, and it may take courage. But if you start in humility, it will birth wisdom, and God will give it in spades like he did with Solomon. So today, you know, as you pray for wisdom in the times we live right now, if it's making decisions that are hard ones right now, even us as a church, please be praying for us, and that God just guides us and gives us wisdom of what we do as a church and act wisely. I would ask that God gives it generously, because he says he will. I would practice humility and resist pride, because that's where humility grows in that ground. That's where wisdom grows in the ground of humility. And I would, I don't know, ultimately follow the guide from heaven, or try to embrace these virtues of wisdom, which is pure, peaceable, gentle, open to reason, full of mercy, good fruits, impartial and sincere. And maybe meditate on those this week. As an ambassador of heaven, I would say wisdom from above is our definition of wisdom. So let's seek to be wise in every one of our everyday decisions, and especially in this season that we're at now. So yeah, guys, that's my encouragement on wisdom. There's so much more to teach on this subject. There's so much more we could talk about, but maybe I can just get you thinking about, what does the Bible say about wise living, wisdom, and wise people? And maybe do your own exploration and see where God leads you in that way. So let's pray. God, we love you. We thank you. We thank you for your mercy. We thank you for your love. We thank you, God, as we come to you and we ask, like a child, you give as like a good father. And God, to help us be in the mind and the mode of like Solomon, being willing to say, I don't really know, I need help, God. Would you give me wisdom and understanding to govern or steward the things that are yours that you've given to me? My family, my friends, my relationships, even really everything I have, God. Help me have the wisdom like Solomon did to take care of your people, like I will need wisdom to take care of the things you've given me to steward. And help us make the right decisions we can, God. Thank you for your grace. Thank you that you are in relationship with us and that you love, love, love to give your children wisdom. In Jesus' name, amen. Guys, thank you. We will going to move it over to worship now, and then we'll see you in the chat after worship. Thanks, guys.
Lord, I come, I confess, bowing here, I find my rest, and without you, I fall apart. You're the one that guides my heart. Lord, I need you, oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness, oh God, how I need you. The sin runs deep, your grace is more. Where grace is found is where you are. And where you are, Lord, I am free. Holiness is Christ in me. Where you are, Lord, I am free. Holiness is Christ in me. Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness, oh God, how I need you. So teach my song to rise to you when temptation comes my way. When I cannot stand, I'll fall on you. Jesus, you're my hope and stay. And when I cannot stand, I'll fall on you. Jesus, Jesus, you're my hope and stay. Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you.
Thanks so much, everyone, for worshiping with us today. If you guys stick around, our staff is going to be reading your comments and talking about the message, so we'll see you there in a second.
All right, I think we are live.
We are.
Yeah.
We are live. I was just live a minute ago.
Yeah, now you're live again.
Still here.
Yeah, so glad you guys tuned in this morning. We're going to go a little bit further with the message, but before we do that, would love to hear from you guys. So feel free to jump in the comments on YouTube. Christy is going to be, interjecting with whatever you guys are saying, and so yeah, say hello. Let us know what you got out of the message. And I want to go a little bit further. I want to grill you since I have you here.
Ooh,
Yeah, I
payback
hope you're,
time.
hope
Hot
you're ready.
seat.
Yeah.
Yep,
Well,
go ahead.
I love the topic of wisdom, and I think there's a lot of stereotypes with it. And one of those is, you kind of graduate, you get older, and you automatically have this wisdom.
Yeah.
And so, as a man who's like significantly older than me, you, Ryan,
Yeah, much. Yeah.
so much older.
I was trying not to be offended, doing some self-soothing when you said that. But
Yeah,
go
so you
ahead.
prepared
Yeah,
yourself.
I did.
But yeah, I love that you kind of address some of those. And just because you're older doesn't necessarily mean you have that. And a person a lot younger than you, like myself, might have some wisdom. So
Yeah, I don't think that the older you are, the wiser you are. I have areas in my life that I see people who are younger than me who are wiser, who display wisdom in areas in their life, and I'm older. So
yeah.
I think if I look at my own self, I can see that that is not true. And then I've met a lot of like wise guys, but not wise. You know what I mean? They're just,
Absolutely.
they've been around longer. But yeah, no, I think that wisdom in some ways, yes, like experience grows maybe a greater perspective of wisdom. But I think grabbing wisdom can happen very young. People who seek out wisdom see a value in that, especially the list of in that verse I was reading in James, because there's a lot of wisdom in someone who's just being open to reason.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I see younger people who are open to reason,
Sure.
and some people who are older who are not.
Not reasonable.
They're
Yeah.
possessing a wisdom from above.
Sure. Well, and I love that you brought it back to James 1:15.
3.
Was it 3? Okay, yeah, just about lacking wisdom and asking. And it's really that simple. Do you feel like we complicate? Because in my own prayer
James
life.
1:5. Sorry.
Yeah,
Sorry.
it's okay. But I wonder, like, sometimes do we just complicate it? Is it as simple as, I mean, in my own prayer life, there's been very few times where I've actually asked God for more wisdom.
Yeah.
And then I wonder why I don't have it. So I don't know. Do you think we kind of complicate? I love that you laid out just some practical ways that we could pursue that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't, for myself personally, don't know why I would approach anything without asking God for wisdom in it. I think that is, it preps me for a humble receiving place in my life.
Yeah.
Of like, so, but I do think that, I mean, it's not like, I think the Solomon story's tough because it's like, God, I need to know how to govern your people well. And it's almost that's why I said like a genie. It's like,
Sure.
then you're really, really smart.
Yeah.
But
really ultimately, like, I think asking and seeking God for wisdom in humility like that, like, God does do it. He grows you in an area. So maybe let's use an example of like the open to reason, right? Or that's one of them, or peaceable.
Sure.
That you're saying, God, like, grow me in wisdom, God. Will you give me wisdom in this area, right? And then come all these other things of discernment and impressions that God might give you in a situation that would disarm you, or a perspective, or even just a part of like, man, I want to ask a further question that might help me understand them more, because I want to be peaceable. I want to be a peacemaker. So like, it's kind of weird, but we think of it like as like boom, it's on you.
Yeah.
But really, it is, I think, a way of living too, that God like really inspires and directs you, and he can do that internally.
Yeah.
You know those feelings when you have them.
Sure.
You know.
Well, I love that it's a process, because I always kind of imagine almost the genie, where I'm going to pray right before I go to bed for more wisdom, and I would wake up the next day and just be a lot smarter. You know,
That's not happening.
That's kind of what it hasn't happened yet. We'll see. But one, I remember hearing one of the smartest things you could do is know when to shut your mouth, and or it takes a big enough man to know how small they are at times. Speaking of knowing when to shut my mouth, Christy, let us know if anyone jumps in. Feel free to.
Yeah. We have some fun comments. Guy said he is old, but he's not sure he's wise. But Dan is affirming him here that he is like fine wine, which only gets better with age. So maybe there is a little bit of wisdom that comes with age.
Yeah.
I like what you said about process, though, because that's what I was thinking about with your list of words. Is like none of those things are immediate. And so I think we tend to think people who are older have more wisdom because they have been through more of those processes in their life. But I think it's also how you deal with them.
Yeah, for sure.
Adrian says that he's like happy we're back, and he wants to know if we're still going to be live streaming, which we will be. Regardless of what the next couple of weeks and months look like, we will still be offering kind of some sort of virtual hangout for those who are still at home or in another state. We always love for you to join us too.
I don't think we're ever going to stop live streaming, because that's just what we will do in partnership with our service always. And we were kind of already doing that, but but there's a lot of things we'll carry over from what we do now, which is great. But yeah, we're never going to stop, Adrian. Don't you dare worry.
You have no excuse not to still be a part of our community. And then just a lot of comments about our worship team and being so thankful for them still providing that music and connection. I know so many of us feel connected to the Lord through music, and then even, get wise sayings and psalms through music as well.
And they've been doing some really creative things, which is so cool. It's just fun to see what they're going to come up with week after week. So I love doing that. I love to worship. I actually sing a lot louder when I'm in my house by myself, because I don't have to worry about kind of offending other people with my terrible singing voice. It's pretty bad. That's why I'm always in the front row at church. You probably think it's because I'm taking notes, but it's because my voice is so bad that I don't want anyone to hear me in front of me.
I'm trying to think, because I sit also in the front on the opposite side.
Oh, yeah.
But so really, it would be Jake and Jess who would know how offensive your voice is.
Oh, and they do. Yeah, they've commented. I'm just kidding. Yeah. But back to the wisdom, something I thought about as, you were addressing some of these like almost stereotypes or misconceptions. And one of the biggest ones I think is wisdom as intellect. And it reminded one of my favorite writers, Ernest Hemingway. I remember he once said that happiness in intelligent people is one of the rarest things he knows. And he believed the smarter you are, the harder it would be to be happy.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and so for him, I think he had a poor understanding of not only happiness, but also, and he struggled with his faith and for a long time and lived quite a tragic life. But I think that you kind of prove biblically that that's not true. And I love that you addressed happiness, in the message, because so many people in the world are searching for that. Everyone wants to be happy. They just don't know what it's going to be. Yeah,
we do a really weird, I don't know what you guys think, we do a really strange job of like, and I hate picking on social media because I don't think that's fair, but there's a way of like curating your life in a way that shows that how happy you are.
Yeah.
But it's the classic, and you know this from having kids, it's your photo looks like, you guys look so happy, but you know what was going on before, and you know the punishments that were given out after that photo. And it's like, we tend to have snapshots of what we think about certain things, even like with happiness.
and we just kind of say, we kind of curate this idea, we kind of build this construct of like, oh, that's what happiness is. But I'm telling you what, people who don't really, you can't physically see that they possess those things, but they could be so happy and fulfilled inside. And so I just think wisdom does feel like, okay, let's not box wisdom in.
Yeah.
Heaven gives us some wisdom virtues and principles. The Bible's full of like nuggets and pieces all over. And God obviously wants us to pursue wisdom almost over anything else that you could ask for, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so there's some clarity there, but I think, yeah, we're getting more and more in a culture. I don't know what you guys think, where we would say, oh, that person has all of it all together. Oh, they're very wise. And it's like, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just don't know. I think there's more, always more.
Yeah, and also just, the smarter you are, the more you know, the more educated you are. People will assume like, well, you must be happier and you must be wiser.
Yeah. Which goes along with that quote you just said from Hemingway.
Yeah, another quote I really loved is kind of understanding, I don't remember who said this, but the difference between knowledge and wisdom is wisdom is knowing that a fruit is I'm sorry, I already blew it. Let's try it again. Knowledge is knowing that a tomato is botanically a fruit, but wisdom is knowing not to put it in a fruit salad. And so it's like having this information doesn't necessarily mean you're wise, but it's what you do with that information.
So true.
Yeah. And so I love that, just continuing to learn, but also just not having it up here, but actually doing something with it.
Yeah. Can I ask you guys a question?
Absolutely.
Turn it around.
Okay.
How have you viewed wisdom, or how is your like when you look for wisdom in others, how has that changed over the years for you? Now, when you see wisdom, how do you identify it?
I mean, I think I definitely thought that like a wise mom was someone who had been through it all. Their kids were older, like it was kind of equating to the years type of thing. But now I think it's kind of hard to judge wisdom at face value. Like you can't judge a book by its cover. You also can't judge someone to be wise just because of the pictures you see or things you know about their life. Like for me, it's knowing about the process that they went through that led them to that wise decision. And I think wisdom kind of, in my perspective, goes hand in hand with like thoughtfulness. Like did they thoughtfully think through something? Were they quick to a decision, or did they go through that process of, I don't know, wise to me just seems like they really took the time, sought out wise counsel, whatever that looked like. So I guess seeking out wisdom looks more like getting to know people a little bit more to find out who is truly wise in those inner workings, because I don't think it's something you can just witness one time and then label someone as that.
Yeah.
You know,
or
like,
even by their accomplishments.
Sure.
Saying like, oh, well, you must be wise.
Right.
Yeah. How about you?
Yeah, for me, for years, I was seeking out somebody who was close to perfect, had it all figured out.
I'm right here.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I've kind of left that, for years I just wanted to learn from an expert or someone who didn't need any help in their life. And as I got older, I realized, number one, that person doesn't exist. But number two, I think the clearest sign of wisdom is in humility, which you talked about in your message. And so I've always looked for those people who are the first ones to ask for help, are the first ones to not only like teach me in a conversation, but have a conversation with me and ask my thoughts, even if I'm saying really dumb things in those conversations. It's just having that person who's really open to learning. Because if you're a know-it-all and you've figured out everything, then you're not going to learn anything. And so I think that's kind of changed my mindset a bit.
Yeah.
I think too, it's like a very interesting season to talk about wisdom, because a lot of people are in difficult situations needing wisdom as to what's the next step. I mean, even for our church, what's the next step for us? What are these next few months and weeks look like, and how are we going to approach that? What's the process we're going to go through? What's our mindset? And I think starting that with humility is huge.
Yeah, because that's difficult for us because we're planners.
Yeah.
Like, we have plan A, B, C, D through Z. And
I don't know if I've ever heard you say you're a planner.
Oh, I'm a big time planner. Are you kidding me?
We just usually actually do write the plan.
Yes.
But yes, you oversee the plan.
Yes. No. I am a planner.
I'm totally teasing. You are.
No. I definitely like try to reduce the risk as much as possible. And so I don't like flying by the seat of my pants, although like I like to come across that way. You know what I mean?
Sure.
But ultimately, I'm thinking about this. Why am I justifying myself? No.
I was just giving you a hard time.
Yeah, no more, Christy. Okay, so I'm a planner, and just so all you know, I am a planner. But I do think that that's the first thing to do is to strategize.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm more of a strategist. That's probably it. I'm okay. So like, I want to make sure that we can strategize right away. But I even the announcement I heard from the president this on Friday, right away I went to strategy and I didn't go, God, how would you want us to proceed? God, I want to sit on this. I want to think on this. I mean, I texted Chad before the words came out of coming out of the president's mouth. And it's like, did you hear the announcement? What do we do? Okay, we got to get together. And so like, it is a matter of like, I do see in wise people the ability to slow down and just wait, you know. And it's like there's so many passages within that of like slow to speak, right? Slow to anger, slow to make quick judgments, or even just sitting and listening or resting and waiting on the Lord. And those are all those things that I think that I will always struggle with, but I want to be more mindful of that. And that starts with humility, because I'm not jumping to my own strategy first. I'm going, God, what's your strategy?
Yeah.
And how can I learn? How can I grow? Open my ears, open my eyes, you know?
Yeah, and I think part of that strategy, like you're asking God, and then you're also asking wise counsel, which for us is also the elders. Like that's process, that's time, that's built in there, so that you're not just leaning on your own knowledge or pride or whatever it is, you know?
Yeah.
I think that's great, and I love that you brought up both of those things. Not only going to counsel, asking people you trust who have a proven track record, but before that is starting with prayer. And it's so obvious, and I still catch myself like, you know, in like sermons. It's like, okay, let me open up all my commentaries, let me start doing all this work, and it's realizing like, oh wait, have I prayed yet? You know, have I stopped and asked God what you want? So yeah.
So I don't know if you heard Dominic and I talking about earlier, but if you have any wisdom on whether you for game night are going to be Vanna White or what's the other guy, Pat Sajak?
Yeah.
We're moving to the fun part of the show, but
clearly,
two hosts is kind of weird. So one of you has to be the little letter turner.
Well, clearly of the two between Rick and I am the much, much, much better looking person.
So he's volunteering to be Vanna.
Okay.
And so, and obviously, I'd probably be easier for me to turn like the things, what are the letters?
The letters, yes.
And I say this with all sincerity. Rick is the game master host extraordinaire. Like I couldn't even touch his ability. So and so no, I would gladly take a backseat to that and be his Vanna.
Well, it's going to be exciting to watch. And by the way, if you guys are interested in joining us for that game night, for Wheel of Fortune, go on the app and sign up. And don't sign up unless you actually want to be on the show. You don't have to sign up to watch it, but sign up if you want to be a contestant. And then we're going to randomly pick 3 names, and we'll let you know. It's going to be fun to watch.
They're coming
can't
here.
Wait.
They're coming here, yes. So you have to be willing to come here. We will take safety precautions.
Yeah.
And then if you want to watch, it'll just be on our YouTube streamed live next Monday.
Oh, yeah. It's coming up.
June
It's going to be
1st.
fun. Yeah.
Wow. Oh, that'll be really fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we're 2 weeks away from community groups starting.
Yes. Yeah. Excited for that. And it's going to be based out of my favorite book in the Bible, the book of Psalms. And so it's going to be really fun, and we're going to be approaching those really as God's prayer book. And we're going to go further into that, but just kind of, I've realized like that's the area I want to grow the most in, is my prayer life. And I've heard so many people say that. So we're excited. There's going to be a lot of us teaching it and just going further with this awesome
There's some
book.
cool topics in that series.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and Dominic wrote the series, so we're excited about it. So we know it's going to be good.
Unless it goes wrong, and then that was Ryan. We'll see. Yeah, I'm just excited for the opportunity and can't wait. And I think the learning is going to continue in those community groups. It's just gathering with people, hearing their perspectives. I love whenever you read one line in the Bible and with 5 people, and God does something differently in each one of their lives. So
very true, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, you learn so much.
So we were hoping to have those signups up by today, but we are still working on some of the details of what those groups are going to look like. We're really hoping that some of them will be able to meet in a social distanced outdoor way. So if you're not subscribed to our newsletter, that's the best way to stay up to date. And we'll be sending out something midweek with all the sign-up information and all the details.
You know the best thing though about meeting with on the video chats is I get to like look inside people's houses.
Bonding in a certain.
Well, intrusive. I was doing a Pathways class the other night, and Luke Kaiser was like, I could see almost his whole like apartment, and I was like looking at his whole place. I don't normally do this, but it's just so like interesting because I don't like find myself like in everybody else's like life and house, and I really liked it.
Yeah, you're being invited over to hang out and
it was weird when Luke started taking the computer to the bathroom to go to the bathroom.
Oh,
I was like, hey, this is too much.
Hey, don't say that. He's a very good volunteer. We won't have to come back.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we got a couple more announcements, right? A couple more things going on. We got the community groups, men's breakfast. We're excited for that. So start thinking about.
I wonder if we might be able to do that in person though. We'll see.
Out.
If we're gonna do it in person, we'll let you know. But right now it's
stay
via
tuned.
video. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you might have to get dressed now. But they built a new Hoff's Hut.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, really?
I saw
So
that.
where we normally meet, Hoff's Hut. If you know me, you know I love Hoff's Hut.
Yeah, it does.
and they built a new Hoff's Hut, and it's like Lucille's style because they own Lucille's as well.
Oh, I don't know.
And they moved out of the old one, and it just opened. It's on Los Al Boulevard.
Okay.
And yes, we love
We
Hoff's
might
Hut.
have to take a little trip there. Well,
Exciting.
those are the announcements. I don't think there's anything else. And so for more information on that, just stay tuned online, on the app, and then, of course, in our announcements, our pre and post chat here. We're going to let you know as soon as you guys know anything, right?
For sure.
Yeah, and we're so happy that you guys tuned in, and we'll see you guys next week.
Bye, guys.